Hello and welcome to Get Informed, America, the show that breaks through the mainstream media box to bring you real smart news. Hi, I'm Dave Oakenquist, and joining me is the editor of InformedAmerican.com, contributor to WallStreetWireNews.com, and I don't know, is he still the smartest man I know? Yes, he is, Mr. Rodney Johnson. How are you? Rodney, the beard is coming in very nicely. I'm liking what I'm seeing here.
There you go. It's gray, so it doesn't show up as well on camera, but it's definitely there.
Wow. Can you believe, Rodney? Christmas is next week, and then, of course, New Year's, and maybe we can say goodbye to 2020 and tell it to screw off forever.
It's been a crazy year.
Yeah, it sure has. Do you put any stock in, when you hear, look, I just saw a commercial for Match where a woman is dating the devil because it's 2020. Aren't we all just tired? Not only are we tired of this year, but I'm also tired of people talking about this year, of how bad it has been. Do you agree?
I think that's, certainly for us, that's the thing. I mean, we work at home, and so it hasn't changed a lot from that angle. But it's the constant flow of information about it that has really been just tiring, right? I mean, you hear people talk about this day in and day out, and you're looking for perspective, and it's really hard to find. There was a good story, and I'm jumping ahead of you here because I don't think this is one of your topics. There's a story that we have like 200 or 300 confirmed cases of the traditional influenza flu through the end of November, which is zero. Statistically, it's zero, and so we just don't have the flu this year. And that's actually a nice spot of good news, because the worry was that we would have the normal flu traveling around while we have coronavirus, which would take away, hospital capacity. But with no flu, with no normal influenza, we just don't have that. And so it's great, but you got to look on page, A14 to find it anywhere, because people just they're not going there. And the whole thing of restaurants shutting down, and this keeps going along. And the information we're getting is that restaurant transmission in restaurants is close to zero. I mean, it is something, but it's close to zero. And if you shut capacity to 25%, then you cut even that transmission by 50%. And yet nobody's talking about those numbers. And so that's very frustrating to me.
Oh, well, in fact, I believe it was Governor Newsom of California who essentially admitted that fact that you just stated. And the real purpose was simply to keep people home.
Well, right. And so they say, well, it's not really for that reason. It's for this other reason. It's like, no. You don't get to play those games. And so I, being forever the optimist, am still hopeful that there will be many legal cases that come out of this that work their way up the food chain, eventually to the Supreme Court, that says, you really don't have the authority to do these things. And so there is no blanket authority for you to, just put something out there without it passing through some legislative body in your county, in your, city, and in your state.
Well, I love, Rodney. I'm always heartened by your continued faith in the system. But by that time, there may not be a business left and no point for suing.
Well, there will be, but let's hope it'll change its way for the next pandemic or the next thing that we have to deal with. So.
Yeah. Now, you're right. The good news about the flu. Now, some would say the flu never went away. We simply renamed it. But I would be curious to see, but excuse me, based on that point, see where excess deaths land on that net basis compared to, say, last year or something like that in a typical flu season. Maybe we get some encouraging news. If we're not getting all those flu deaths, instead they may be COVID instead. But if they're not, massively more than what we typically get in a flu season, then that could be a good sign. And of course, now as the vaccine is rolling out, are you? I asked you this before, but are you? Is this even on your radar right now?
No, it's because we're not 60 years old and we don't have underlying health conditions and we don't work in a front-facing business with the public and we're not in healthcare. We don't hit any of the markers, and I wouldn't do it anyway yet. I'm of a mind that there are people who need it more than I do.
Yeah.
And I'm also of a mind that we should be rolling out antibody testing while we do this, because why would you be giving the vaccine to somebody who has antibodies and so many people are asymptomatic? I mean, you're by definition going to be giving it to many people who already have antibodies if you're not testing, which seems like a waste of it. And so I look at it and think, look, I'm at low risk. I'm at low risk for a problem, even if I do get it. Let other people get it. And frankly, I'm not upset by that, because giving it more time to figure out what can happen, I'm okay, right?
Yeah,
I would be okay waiting a long time. I'm not against a vaccine. I'm not against vaccinations,
same.
but we don't know long-term effects because frankly, we've had this one for less than 12 months.
You and yeah, we're parked there in the same spot. I agree 100%.
We agree on something?
We actually do, yes.
Who knew? We should end the show right now. We're done. We agreed on 100%.
It is funny in our conversation. We've known each other for years, and I do consider you a friend. But it is hilarious, on air, off air, how much we actually butt heads. But it's always respectful. All right, Rodney. Let's. Can we start the show, Rodney? You've been going on for like 5 minutes.
Go ahead. Let's
start off with some outrage, and this came out from a story you wrote on informedamerican.com, and it shows a story some people may have seen. United Airlines kicks family off flight because toddler won't wear a mask. Anyone who's dealt with a young child will relate to this. And this is a Colorado couple. This is a young 2-year-old girl. They're trying to get her to wear the mask as they're taking off. She doesn't want to wear the mask, Rodney. And then they kicked the family off the flight. And one of the rumors was United has banned them now. This is a difficult one. Now, you did say, Rodney, that the video was being deleted in certain spots, but I did find it. So I would like to play this for just a bit. Have you seen this video, Rodney?
I have not.
See, all you had to do is go to TMZ. There you go.
Oh, there you go.
So here's the. So that's not happening. And they go through this for a period, and she's no thank you.
Right, exactly.
And it's basically the process here, and then what happens is he. Let me just skip ahead here. What he does is he has her on his lap, Rodney, and then has the mask on her. Let me just stop this because I can't find the exact spot. But he's like, well, I'll just hold it on her face or something like that. But that wasn't good enough for United. And he says, we asked you to cooperate. You wouldn't cooperate. So now you're kicked. This is good. It's a challenge, isn't it, Rodney, to get a 2-year-old to do many things or what you want them to do, particularly putting something on their face, and when they don't want to do something, make that clear. What do you make out of this?
It's asinine. There's no magic here. It's a 2-year-old. Children don't get it as much as adults. They certainly don't get it badly. Masks are for other people. Maybe this child had it, could spread it. It's very, very unlikely. And so if you're going to allow children to fly, then you have to understand there's going to be some leeway with children of this age. And so if you don't want to deal with this, then put a blanket rule out there. No child can fly under 5.
Yeah.
And stand on it, right? If you're going to be that company, then go all the way. But if you're going to allow people with children to fly, don't play this idiotic game where you expect children at 2, 3, even 4 years old to completely comply with your rules, because they don't. And we all know it. And so they put the flight attendants and the crew in a bad place, having to enforce such an idiot thing and this way. And so it's poor guidance from corporate management is what it is. And of course, United, this is yet another video where, remember they dragged that guy off the plane several years ago, physically dragged him off the plane. And so it's a bad look, and it's stupid for a company that's already been through this by dragging that guy off the plane to then have this show up, because clearly we all knew this was going to happen. This is something you can see coming a mile away when you institute this mask for everybody type thing.
Yeah. Now, at 2 years old is basically that's the rule. She was the young girl here was, I think, right on the edge of 2 or just over 2, something like that. So,
but remember, 2 is there's no magic in 2. It's not like at 24 months you suddenly have the ability to catch it and transmit it. 2 is arbitrary. And so if you're going to pick an arbitrary, why would you pick an arbitrary when the child has a tendency to misbehave in this way in the small acts of defiance, which we all know happens with children of that age?
The terrible 2s.
It's silly. Yeah.
And what's the logic here? Is clearly public safety, whatever. But is this afraid of liability or something like that, or someone else complaining, or what do you think that is? Why before
I
we get
think
on
it's wrapped up in all that. But it should be the reasonableness standard, which is something I talk about a lot, and I realize it's hard to implement. But if you're going to be on a plane, if you're going to get into a metal tube with 168 other people for some length of time, then you're going to take a chance of transmission of a disease. It just is. And so if you're going to get into this metal tube with 168 other people for a length of time, and there can be children there who have a tendency not to behave, then guess what? You are taking a chance. And if this is an issue, don't get on the plane. Don't buy the ticket.
Fantastic analysis, Rodney. Thank you so much. I have just one point of curiosity here in this video, because I just the parents were speaking to the child in a not in English. What do you make of that? You think they're trying to raise her to be bilingual or something like that? That struck me as different.
I didn't see the video, but I don't know. So I hope she does. That's one of the things I regret in life is not picking up and maintaining a language, right? When I hear people speaking other languages in the US and then flipping to English, I'm always a bit, jealous that I didn't do that. So
what would have been your dream language to have learned at a young age?
Well, I took Spanish, French, and German along the way, but Spanish is the one that I wish I knew because clearly, we have a language barrier. I'm in Texas, and so it would be great if I knew that language. So
excellent. I would have liked to learn Italian because I am Italian, and will always hold that against my mother for not teaching it to me as a child.
But you don't go to Italy,
huh?
You don't go to Italy.
Well, no, but I have Italian family. Then maybe I would go to Italy, Rodney. Not on a plane. I'd have to take a boat because I don't know if I can handle a intercontinental flight. But we'll see. I don't know. Well, I don't know. Okay, so that's my answer. Okay, I don't have to justify.
I'm with you. Yes.
Okay, so that was a little bit of an outrage topic. Now I want to move to a larger topic, sort of a multiple topic, but it's really one big topic, which is the economy, Rodney. And I saw this graphic earlier in the week, and you may have seen this as well. But there is a looming eviction problem, Rodney. The federal moratorium, the eviction ban, it will expire at the end of the year, and it was shocking, at least to me, the number of people at risk. This is deadly serious. I don't know if you saw this graphic, Rodney. This is a map. 17 million Americans are not current on the rent or mortgage payment, and nearly 33% face foreclosure or eviction in the next 2 months. And this shows it by state. Your home state, your state, Rodney, 42.5% of people are at risk. There's a couple that are even higher. New Mexico at 52%, Louisiana at 56%. Now, not all of these people are going to get evicted, of course, but it does show you the number of people, the number of Americans, households at least, who are struggling to make their rent and mortgage payments and could potentially be out on the street without some help here. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's a terrible situation, right? The number that I saw was $70 billion owed in back rent. And most rentals are not big corporations. They're mom and pops who own 2 or 3 homes that they rent out, or townhouses, or, a little apartment building or something.
Yeah.
And so those people have their own bills to pay. And so we moved the pain from the renter to the property owner, but we didn't alleviate the pain. And so when we talk about things like this, we're not talking about solving the problem. We're talking about, well, just push it along. Here's the bigger issue that's going to happen. First of all, I think that the new stimulus package is going to keep the moratorium on evictions past December 31. Okay. But there again, they're not supplying any money to pay the people who own the property. They're not fixing.
Right.
And so somewhere down the road, be it in, March or June or something, this is going to end. And all of these people who owe the back rent, so remember, they still owe it, even though they didn't pay it. They're going to just move. And so they're going to have this debt that's going to follow them because the landlord, he needs his money. The landlord has to pay his, property insurance and the employees that work there and the mortgage and all the other stuff.
Yeah, taxes, certainly, yeah.
He's going to sue and say, look, I need that $7,000 you owe me that you're never going to pay, right? And so then you're going to have these 17 million people with this big black mark on their credit score. And so it's going to follow through the system. We're going to cripple the rental property market a little bit. It's just going to be goofy. And so I think it's been poorly managed because we didn't attack the problem. We attacked the symptom and simply just foisted it onto somebody else.
So are we
And
gonna need a
so
special fund, maybe a bailout for landlords, essentially?
I don't know that you need a bailout. I'm not a fan of that, but you have to recognize that by stopping the evictions, you didn't change anything that happened. And you do have, I recognize that there are a lot of people out of work. And so a lot of those people are at risk because they have no money.
Yeah, I mean, we
You
didn't want
have
to see them thrown out on the street, right? I mean, we had half of America homeless, so what,
That's
that's
the
not good
problem.
either.
But we do have unemployment benefits exactly for that.
Yeah.
The other side of that is there are some people who are just choosing not to pay. And so you live in Tampa area where I lived for years. We know this, Trey. We saw this happen in 2009, 10, 11, and 12, where people lived in their homes without paying their mortgage for years, not because they couldn't, but they were so far underwater. They said, what's the point? I'm just going to live here until I'm kicked out and take the mortgage money and do something else.
Yeah.
And so you don't, because you allowed this situation to become what it is, where you tell people they don't have to pay. A lot of people are saying, so I won't pay. Now, there are restrictions on it. You're only supposed to not pay your rent if you are suffering from the pandemic. But that implies that the landlord is going to check on it and he's going to verify and he's going to take you to court and all those other things, which may happen, but it takes time. So you can still do all these things and not pay and, go along for months or now what, 7, 8, 9 months, more than half a year without paying your rent or mortgage. Remember, there are 4 million people not paying their mortgage too.
It's crazy. And, even despite this ban, I just this morning, just preparing for having to deal with you, I came across, sorry.
It's okay. I'll take it.
I came across an NBC News. I'm just joking, of course, everyone. Came across an NBC News story of these evictions are still happening despite the ban. There was a couple of examples in Florida. I mean, I'm sure they're few and far between. It's not massive like this, but people that have been laid off or lost their jobs due to COVID. It's still, some judges don't allow it, even though it's clear I lost my job because of the pandemic. So I do feel
well, some of it is living arrangement, because if you live in a motel, then it's not rent. I mean, it's short-term lodging. And so if you're living week to week in a motel, then it's a question of whether or not you're a resident. And so those motel owners can kick you out. Some sympathetic judges say, no, you've been there for 3 months. Clearly you're a resident now. But that's a really gray area that people are dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. So we hope we get something done there. And in terms of solutions to the bigger problem, which is, of course, this recovery that sort of isn't, right, in a lot of ways. I mean, it's coming back in a little bit for certainly those of us who were lucky enough to keep our jobs. Although we maybe pulled back our spending, we're kind of getting back a little bit. But there's so many of those people many people are still out of work, Rodney. So in terms of solutions, I got 3 things here that caught my eye. One of them was written by you, an informed American. To grow the world economy, IMF says just borrow and spend a bunch of cash. This is the plan for the G20 nations to boost their spending, which they believe could help spur economic growth. Now, that's definitely on the table. I saw another thing here on zerohedge.com this morning. Former Goldman Sachs CFO Marty Chavez, it comes out in favor of universal basic income. Why, Rodney? To quote, stave off revolution. And finally, not a solution per se, but an ongoing policy, which is the Fed commits to keep buying bonds until the economy goes back to full employment. Well, that's going to be a long time, Rodney. So we are certainly in this for the long haul, and what that might mean over the long haul could be massive government spending to help dig us out of this hole. How do you see this?
I think it's coming, right? It's the one thing that the two political parties can agree on is spending our money. And so I think we're going to see a huge infrastructure bill come through next year in the name of restarting the economy and doing something good for the economy. I think it's going to be a couple of $1 trillion, and it's going to be on top of the stimulus that's working its way right through right now. And pretend I didn't say that so you don't cover your ears.
I know,
yeah. But so I think you're going to see a lot of money spending. Universal basic income is a great idea if you pair it with the notion of getting rid of everything else. Don't do temporary assistance for needy families. Don't do WIC. Don't do SNAP. Don't do all the other social programs. Just do UBI and then tax it away as people make more money. And you can't do it at thresholds, right? It has to be a percentage that moves up so that you're not encouraging anybody not to make money. And so I have no problem with it, but we never seem to get to that part. It's always just give away more cash. But back to the G20 and then the Fed, because governments aren't being punished with paying higher interest, they have no reason to be judicious with cash. And so if you could take a loan at 1% interest for $1 million, and pay $10,000, would you do it? I mean, I don't know. A lot of people would. And if you could take a loan for $1 million at 0.1% interest, think about that, $1,000. That's where our federal government is. That's where most governments are. And by the way, in Europe, they're negative. Governments can borrow millions and billions of dollars, and they have to pay back less than the loan when it matures. So what motivation do they have to be judicious with the cash? And so this is where we are. And the Federal Reserve and other central banks are enabling this because they are buying so many bonds. The Federal Reserve, and I won't bore you with all the numbers, but just know that they're buying roughly $120 billion worth of bonds every month to keep interest rates ridiculously low. And this is about 50% more than they were buying when they were doing QE back after the great financial crisis, right? At the point where they called it Q infinity, where they were just going to buy until things got better. They were buying 70, 75 billion a month. And here they are at 140. And so I'm sorry, not 50% more. We're closer to 100% more, aren't we? So anyway, the point is we're buying so many more bonds, and it's keeping interest rates ridiculously low. And it's killing savers. This is something everybody can see. Go look at your savings account, see where you used to earn a couple of percent on your checking account or in your, whatever. It is literally 0.1. And so it forces people into risky assets. This is what it does. You want to know why Wall Street's flying? It's because interest rates are close to zero. And if you want to make a return, you have to go into stocks, and it pushes everybody further out on the risk curve.
It's funny because, I have, of course, a checking account and then a separate, what used to be a, quote, high yield online savings account. And at this point, I only put the money in there just so it's out of my sight. It serves no other purpose. It doesn't earn any money.
I have a money market account tied to my other accounts, and I used to use it for different things years ago. And in 2008 or 9, I can't remember, I just stopped using it. And it's got $700 in it. It had $700 when I stopped using it. I think it has $714 in it. This is after more than a decade. And that just kind of tells you where we've been.
Great stuff.
And I leave it just because it annoys me. I look at it once in a while and go, yes, this is how we're killing savers in the United States of America.
Yeah, it is a constant reminder. I'd like to go back just a second to UBI, Universal Basic Income. Could it potentially? Now, I agree with your point, which is essentially you remove welfare programs and you make it. It certainly would streamline things. Could it potentially, if you wanted to sell this, could you sell this as being revenue neutral, or is that just a complete pipe dream?
That's a pipe dream, because it wouldn't be revenue neutral, but from the standpoint of the spending and expenses. However, you could sell it as close to revenue neutral because you pull out all of the bureaucracy involved right now. Yeah. Just imagine what we go through to verify things for TAMF and for all the other things that we have, the unemployment benefits, all that stuff. And you could just get rid of it. I mean, it's just gone.
Yeah.
And so, if you're unemployed, I don't care. You're still getting your UBI, but your tax rate is now zero. Well, it's not zero because you actually pay taxes on unemployment benefits, but you get my point. Yeah. And so you can do this very elegantly, and you could get rid of all of the bureaucracy. But, cities and states and the federal government aren't interested in getting rid of bureaucracy. That's a job killer.
That's a good point. Although if they lose a job, they'll have universal basic income.
There you go. Right.
Do you have a number in mind? The one I've heard about is around 30,000, something like that. And some certainly have it higher and lower, but that's the one roughly about where I come across. Do you have
I'm more in the 16 to 18 range.
Okay. So. You penny pincher. I say just hit the gas, and actually this will be an ongoing conversation, and I think we're gonna have this one a little bit more certainly as we see what the next Congress will do, what they might pass in terms of stimulus. I think, can we say we're not going to see one in this Congress? Or are you still hopeful by the end of the year?
A stimulus? Yeah, we're going to have it. We're going to have it by Christmas Day.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
and
good.
so, but in terms of UBI, you're going to hear about it because Andrew Yang is running for mayor of New York.
So interesting.
Yeah.
So that would be a continuing conversation. And I do want to, in future shows, Rodney, really talk about maybe we get into modern monetary theory or something. Some of these ideas where they assume you could just spend into oblivion with no consequences. So, and I know that might rub certainly many of our viewers the wrong way. So, but I would like to maybe poke them a little bit. But that's all I have for this week. I do want to tell everyone next week, since it is Christmas week and offices will be closed, so there will not be a show next week, but there will be one the following week for us to close out, Rodney, 2020. You have anything you want to hit on before we get out of here? And also, as I encourage everyone here to subscribe to the channel and hit the thumbs up button if they're watching on Facebook. To also hit the like button, share this video with their friends. Head on over to informedamerican.com, where you can get daily pieces written by the man right there, Mr. Rodney Johnson. And if they do that, what kind of stories can they hope to find over the coming days? This is going to be Christmas stuff, stimulus stuff. What do you got in mind?
It's going to be both of those, right? It's going to be the stimulus. That's going to be the big thing. The election's kind of fading at this point. And so it's going to be all about what's happening next year. And hopefully we can move on to next year and have a next year. And then it's going to be lockdowns in front of Christmas.
Wait, we might not have a next year?
Well, we'll have it, but hopefully it'll be different and better. And so, of course, the new vaccine from Moderna has been recommended for approval. That's going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
And so it's the race, right, between the vaccination, the lockdowns, and then the hospital use. And so I think that's where we're going. But you know what? I'm an optimist. So I'm looking forward to a Merry Christmas and a great 2021.
Absolutely. For Rodney Johnson, I'm Dave Oakenquist, wishing you a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and we will see you just before the year closes out. As Rodney, the eternal optimist, the man with the unshakable faith in the system as mine continues to crumble. We will see you on New Year's Eve. Have a great one.
You've been listening to Get Informed, America, brought to you by the Informed American Radio Network. Please like and subscribe today in order to get new exclusive weekly episodes. Any questions, thoughts, or comments can be sent directly to info@informedamerican.com. And don't forget to visit informedamerican.com to keep up with real, smart news. Until next time, fight fake news and find common ground.